second one I want to add on, beyond the 1 trillion shillings that Uganda borrowed, and which is, as correctly stated, to be staggered over 3 financial years, there was also some money which came separate as the special drawing rights. I've seen issues, some people tend to confuse the two monies. The two monies actually separate. That's number 2. Number 3, as Dr. Bushra has said, this money, even the one that came as a loan, the 1 trillion shillings, I think Rapid Credit Facility 2, Rapid Credit Facility 2, million. That money, it was directed, a certain sum up to so much shall go to Bank of Uganda, to the central bank, to beef up the bank reserves. Then the one that will go to financing the budget will only be so much. But the other third component was specifically go into improving accountability frameworks in this country. So the money is given, but it is also conditional. We need to check for the subsequent financial years whether that is the same measure they continue to use. So no wonder these guys can come up and say, no, you have qualified very well on the so you qualify for the second chunk of money. Because they are not operating outside this. They are not operating outside this. Ladies and gentlemen, as long as this is not that, you can always qualify from level 1, you go to P3, you go to P4, you go to P5. But at P7, we shall actually tell whether you were actually studying or not, because the exam will come. In other words, then you wouldn't be indebted by a certain time. You have done so well, you should now be the lender, not the borrower, at face value. I think for me, that's what I've ended with. You are not going to actually pay this money at 0 interest. It will only be dressed in a certain type of growth, while you had expected this gentleman in terms of interest already to come in a certain way. Yeah, thank you for now.
Well, Julius, very briefly, I think what I've understood most from your explanation, I've realized that initially I thought probably maybe the spirit in which these international organizations give us money, I thought the spirit was initially good. Now that I've got it from you, that not purely true. So, and I think I would also read an example of some of these investments done by illicitly done in these developed countries. We've had several rich people and politicians investing in some of these countries. And then we also realize later when things go bad, these are properties they usually seize in terms of sanctions. In case there's, so I would also ask myself, if their interest is really for us to develop, why don't they stop them, invest at that level, probably ask more questions where these monies are coming from.
Yes.
So I think I'm getting that more clearly. Yeah. But also the other thing, now that we realize the spirit is not that good as Africa, because we have seen this sluggish development in most of these African countries. What could be the possible solution? I think my colleague has tried to raise the same question. But I think we need explanation. What could be the ultimate solution to these moving problems that we usually experience as Africans? Should we turn this to this public expenditure that is unnecessary? Is it about corruption? Is it about the way we pay taxes? Where is the problem, and how best can we address that? Because it seems to be a general problem in Africa. And really give us that money on probably better terms for us to be able to do things our way. Is there such kind of arrangement?
One question was, wouldn't it be a way to save us from debt? Then it'd be good to campaign for more taxes and stuff. I think that's one way. It's true. We need to pay more taxes to get ourselves out of this. However, believe it or not, even if you paid more taxes, you'll get more debt. If you see our budget, for example, our budget this year, going to be, if I'm not wrong, I think they're projected to be 44 trillion. 44 trillion. And we're about 45 million Ugandans. So if you round it off, it's about 1 million shillings per Ugandan for the whole year. That's what government says is going to spend on us. So imagine even you guys who may not have salaries. Some of you said you had no salaries. If somebody comes to you on January 1st, okay, July 1st for this matter, and says, okay, I give you 1 million shillings, don't talk to me again until June 30th. Next year, you say, boss, please, where are you going? How am I supposed to survive? You can see how much more resources we need. We haven't even begin. That is essentially. So if you're going to tax, if you're going to, everyone, but you're right about taxes, because right now we have a tax to GDP ratio of about, is it about 12.9?
0.8, yeah, 9.
When we have rebased, when we are recounted, recently it became 12.9. URA was not amused because the previous one they had reached 14.3.
Yes.
So then we went and we recounted the economy, and the economy grew, and then it was down 12.9%.
Yeah.
So imagine, if this is 12.9% of GDP, sub-Saharan average is about 18%. Imagine how much we have to work to get to 18%. And probably every 5 years we're going to recount the economy. Every 5 years. So you can imagine. But keep this figure in mind, 1 million shillings. It just shows you how much work we have to do. And it's shocking that if you go and check, I think the last time I did the figure, when you check how much government has committed to health, it's about 80,000 per Uganda. So that is including...
That's budgeted, not even actual release.
Yes, we have not even, we don't know what is going to be released. That means that the doctor's salaries, medicines, everything, 80,000 per Uganda. When they tell you you're a poor country, you know, okay, we can even talk about how you count this, whether we're a poor country or not, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, so taxes, the more people that pay taxes, the better we will be, at least to service the debt. We're struggling to service the debt because we don't pay enough taxes. The number of people, you know, human beings who pay taxes in Uganda, probably, direct taxes, probably about 2 million, out of a workforce of 20 million. So only 10% of us are paying taxes. You can see we're really in shambles. There was a good one about, and it speaks to also what Julius was talking earlier about the intentions of the donor, the lending countries. You know that country is corrupt. You see the public officials getting that, suddenly buying mansions in London and in America. Don't you ask, but we know you're from a poor country, 1 million shillings per person. How come you're buying things in our place and we continue to give you? Which raises the question of what is the real intention of these people. Yes. You have to wonder about that. The good one and the best, actually it was a question I wanted to leave you with. What do we need to do to a solution to this situation? In my mind, one of the things, Julius will also probably say something about it. He will always say something about it. One of the things we don't do very well in this country and in Africa, and it's also by design, it's not by mistake that we are like that, is we do not what you call aggregate our resources. So for example, of all the money in circulation in Uganda, let's say 100% of the money in circulation in Uganda, only about 20% is in the formal financial sector. Yeah. If you go to a place like Germany, the opposite is true. 80% is in the financial sector, 20% is hanging around under their mattresses and what. The problem with that is, you see, if I put my money under the mattress, it doesn't help anyone, it doesn't even help me. Okay, maybe it might improve the comfort at night, because maybe my mattress is not even, but it doesn't help anyone. But if I put my money in a bank, let's just say in a circle, even if I put it there and I go away, somebody else will use it. And that's many times the difference in what you call resource mobilization. That's why they can do 266% of GDP. They borrow mostly from themselves, by the way. Because no one donates to America. Well, no one, well, the Chinese donate a lot of money to America. But the Americans can borrow from themselves. Us, we can't borrow from ourselves because the money is not there. We're not putting it in the banks. We're just there chilling with it in our bed, under our mattresses and what. So one thing we need to do in this country, and Africa as a whole, is to mobilize these resources. Imagine if you have if now you have let's just 1 trillion in the bank, that means about 4 trillion is under our mattresses. If you can reverse that equation, or we can make it equal, 2.5, 2.5, it will be amazing. First of all, even things like lending rates will go down. You know, we have the story of lending rates are high, lending rates are high. We do not save enough, there's no money there to lend. You put the money there and you see, because a banker makes money from lending. If he doesn't lend, he's making a loss. He doesn't want to keep your money. I think in Japan, they have what they call negative interest rates.
Yeah.
People pay you, or what?
And Denmark, the Scandinavians.
Yeah, they pay you to take the money. So do you want money? Here, 1 million plus, let me pay you 100K to take the money. They have reached a situation where there's so much money, and the bank has to make money. But if the bank holds the money, it's an expense to the bank. The bank doesn't want that. It needs to earn money. Now in Uganda, because we don't save, the banks say they become selective. Us we only lend to government, or we only lend to Shell. We don't lend to you, to Awansi. You people, you're too risky. But you flood that place with money, you'll see. And it's not impossible. When I started as a journalist, NSSF did not even have 1 trillion shillings in its coffers.
Yeah.
Today it has 15 trillion. So it is not impossible for us to save. The money is there. Because where did 15 trillion of NSSF come from? I've seen it in my lifetime. It has gone up 15 times. It's amazing. But then the story of NSSF is very underreported.
Yes.
It is one of the biggest financial miracles in this country. And it was just a simple decision in 1985 to say, okay, we're going to have NSSF in 1985, before this government. So don't think this government that not NSSF.
It affected it.
No, even before. Yeah, well, yeah, because 85 is. So they said 5% workers pay 5%, and employer pay 10%. It was just a simple thing like that. It has taken how many years now? 37 years to amend. Which law in Uganda has lasted 37 years without being amended? Imagine if we had amended this law just in 1995, where we would be? We would be much further ahead. So the solution for us is to aggregate our resources. The resources are here. Yeah. One time, and that's money alone. One time they told me the story. They did an aerial survey of Uganda to see our mineral wealth. And the guys came back and were shocked. They said, you guys, if we were to exploit all of Uganda's mineral resources, all Ugandans would have to leave. That every square dot in this country, that would say, okay, now Ugandans, maybe they create a war and they send out like Ukrainians so they can exploit the place. Yeah. But that is how rich we are. But as I said earlier, it is not by mistake that we kind of don't know. Yeah. Because if we knew, it would become a problem. When you become a problem, they sort you out. Yeah. So yeah, but the solution is we have the means. The means are with us. It's just that we don't know. You don't want. No, I think even the ignorance is deliberate, that you remain ignorant so that you don't do. So if that equation that Julia showed you will not happen if we decide to do our own thing. The guys will say, no, these people have become a problem, then suddenly you'll have coups. That was the point. Yes. It still can happen, but in the 80s and 70s, they get annoyed with you, they just cause a coup.
Even today, in West Africa, it is happening.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, they say this is a story maybe only Amin would have told us, maybe other people. But they say when the coup in 1971 happened, Amin was hiding in a cupboard. So who did the coup? The guy was hiding in the wardrobe. He was scared that they had come for him, even if he was worried. So who overthrew the government? Can you imagine?
Therefore, we can't be exhaustive. But I think for you, as our ears and eyes to our society, those are the questions you should be asking. Do we have a way out? In the Christian one, they say, whoever repents and God will now go to across the river Jordan. Me, I am not going there because I love here better. So, has Uganda cleared any debt? The answer is yes, but we don't have the time to look into the details. But check the case of what Uganda owed to Burundi, owned by the previous government, as a quick offhand example, and check how we went about it, but we paid, now we are on good talking terms, we don't have any problem. Can we stop borrowing? Yes and no. The no part of it would be, what have you done back home as at personal level? If you're always constrained, we buy 50k transport in Iraq, a car, the money pass at home, even when you know the money pass was empty. What gets you there? And what can you do at individual level? Those are the similar kind of questions we will be asking for rather reducing the risk. But what is more compelling that I quickly want to go to, and maybe because of the limited time talk about 2 3 points, is how do we get out of this predicament, out of this situation? There is the short term, maybe the long term, and the medium. The short, the medium, and the long. The short, for instance, Uganda, you have got issues with smuggling and stealing your taxes. So combat smuggling and import tax evasion, because you earn a lot of your money through taxes. So combat smuggling, we get a lot of money. About 70% of Uganda's total import tax comes through Malaba. So you go and deal with Malaba, because it's where 70% of your revenue comes. 70% of Uganda's domestic revenue is collected from this Kampala. So go and sort out the under-declaration and the stealing you have moved. And related to that, for instance, you have got at URA 6 installed scanners. So somebody says, I'm carrying cigarettes when it is actually sweet potatoes. And the scanner, you only have up to 6 of them. Take them to about 40. And you'll see 40% revenue increase. Because these don't look like, is it a maido from Usoga or is it a maido from... Then you'll tell whether it is actually what has been declared. For me, that's the first one. The second one, that's why I said they are short term and the medium and the long term for me is having a development state. Therefore, you become a bad student of IMF and the World Bank, who rule this world financially. They have told you, sell everything that you have. Like Jesus told somebody, how shall I go to heaven? Said, everything you have you sell and give to the poor. The rich man went lamenting, and the rest is. So you were told that you Africans, you and I are very bad managers. Do you look bad managers when you look at your respective faces? Now you have managed your home. Now you have managed those business entities you are running at personal level. Now you are the guys who are making KFM succeed. You are the guys who are making the nation media succeed. You are the guys who are making the UBC corporate world and the entire so many succeed. So why are you bad managers? Is it actually true that you are bad managers? Therefore, go and sell, go and sell, go and sell everything. Me, I would talk about a developmental state. And we can always have additional discussions on this, but quickly. For instance, that you cannot have you cannot have a subsector like energy for security, for strategic, for economic reasons. And you surrender it to a certain umeme. That one is with that you cannot go to heaven. Safaricom, as an example, in the case of Kenya, which is the one is actually the best performing corporate entity, best performing in revenue generation and in corporate management. Who are the people that run it? They are Africans. But also in terms of revenue, government of Kenya is a shareholder. And when it has made profit, government of Kenya also works along other shareholders to pick its dividend. While the other ones are putting in the pocket because they are private players, this one puts into state coffers. So Uganda, you do business. Because government has got the biggest amount of money, it can leverage that to start Osukuru fertilizer, which the Chinese have abusing us with other private sector. That money that you are getting, the entire value chain benefit remaining in this country. The cotton growing, the ginning, the I don't know what, plus the tailoring finally to get the growth. You can compete or compete Chinese imported things. That money remains here, it will give you a lot more leverage. And you don't even need to increase by the tax burden on us, but rather you are tapping into what you already have. The last one I'll end with is, and we have such many examples. The last one I'll end with is flagship investment. Tourism, trade, agricultural sector, to mention but a few, for purposes of export and for purposes of revenue. You are the journalists, you check how much tourism brings in this country. Therefore, if you sanitize it a bit more and you double that money, do you need to increase tax on me? So those are some of the many things that have quickly brought to the fore. But if you want, we can have a separated discussion and we delve into those.
Work closely with the broader stakeholders, because we are not the only stakeholders in this. Of the media in the debt discourse, to inform, report on debt trends, landscape, and dynamics therein. Critical sources. Of course, there is the Ministry of Finance. If the story is coming from finance, there are different people you can, there are departments, fully fledged departments, where one can go and confirm facts in order to achieve better reporting. There is a few stories that I managed to single out. Of course, the first one was appreciated as a good story by nearly all people who care. It was appreciated as a very good story. It had the human interest. In fact, it got citizens into the discussion on debt, even those that never wanted to care, because of course there are people who think they don't pay tax, debt doesn't concern them, they shouldn't even worry. But of course painting a picture of each Ugandan now owes 1.5 million shillings, got everyone into the discussion and, minding about debt. And that was before the media training. We don't want to say that it's us that played a key role, but the next story, that was by East Africa, drowning in debt. Of course, East African newspaper and New Vision, Daily Monitor, Independent, they have all published a series of stories on how ESC countries are going on a borrowing spree and how the increasing debt burden should be a concern for everyone. So a number of stories have come out, and I just wanted to single out the two just to make us appreciate that there is work that has been done, and it's not yet over. There is more that is yet to be done. There is I just got this screenshot from Twitter. I appreciated it because I know some of us know this lady. I very much fell in love with her in-depth analysis, interrogating beyond the figures, beyond one figure, interrogating what that means. That Ministry of Education secured that World Bank loan to construct school. But of that, the highest percentage, up to 60%, will be spent on overseeing implementation of the project. So if someone actually picked interest and went deep into writing such a story, I think a number of issues would have been brought to the attention of the powers, the duty bearers. But it's not that she's the only person doing that. I appreciate a number of journalists are doing this, but we need to keep doing more of the same to go beyond the figures. Because sometimes behind the figures, there are realities that can scare you. That a lot of money, a lot of borrowed money is not spent, and yet you have to pay interest. So interrogating such really critical facts helps us to shape the debt discourse and also ensure that there is prudent debt management. The progress made, key observations, since we held the training last year, we recognize and appreciate that the media has risen to the challenge. From what I shared earlier, there is now human interest reporting, interrogating facts, and of course, recently NBS published a story, and it was really in-depth, and also picking interest into the Otagenos report, checking facts, what's the status of debt in Uganda and the ESC region beyond the Auditor General's report that is published at national country level, but also picking interest, doing comparisons. Where does Uganda stand in the ESC, and also interrogating the rhetoric of our debt is sustainable. What does that mean? Beyond just comparing debt to GDP. So going beyond those facts and realities. And of course, the informative reporting. We appreciate that beyond quoting authoritative sources that so and so said this, there is now a reporter's narrative. The different media persons interrogating facts, and also, of course, bringing their own narrative to, issues as they play out. So we appreciate that this has been done, and we encourage those that are doing it to keep doing it, because it helps us to get to find out and learn and appreciate where we stand in terms of the debt discourse. There is increased attention to debt-related issues. Of course, now debt is no longer a preserve of technical people. Now, increasingly, journalists are starting to interrogate issues, debt-related issues, and of course also building public participation in the debt discourse. The detailed stories in electronic and print media focusing on sustainability for different countries. This has been done. I will show some of the good stories that were published. This has been done. Agenda setting for the public. Of course, asking the hard questions and interrogating some of the issues that are around debt. The media has set the agenda. Instead of, because from where we're coming from, the past, there was more to entertainment, economic issues were not given prominence. But with the advent of COVID, increasingly there is more prominence given to economic issues. Given that now countries are overwhelmed, and Uganda is no exception, now we're looking at financing development. Every year there is a recurrent revenue shortfall. So all that, as it plays out, the media is setting the agenda and asking the hard questions. What needs to be done? This is critical moving forward. Of course, civil society organizations have a key role to play. That's what we believe. AFRODAD, UDN, CITINI, collectively, and other actors and stakeholders, we all have a role to play, ensuring sustained information sharing, not sharing just as a one-off, but rather sharing as new issues emerge, because the debt landscape evolves. So today it might be one issue of SDRs, but tomorrow it could be another whole issue where now we are advocating for cancelable debt. So as debt issues evolve, there is need to ensure sustained exchange and sharing of information. And of course also ensuring that the media reports stories with human interest. Because of course, borrowing for who? That has to be asked. Government borrows, but for who? To invest in what? What's the payment period? What are the conditions? Because some of the loans are expensive that we borrow, and thus they enslave us and frustrate some of the development aspirations that countries like Uganda want to achieve. For the journalists, of course, they need to expand the pool of sources, inviting technical people from government to talk about how they negotiate. Of course, sometimes there are bad deals. And so interrogating issues beyond just the figures that Uganda has borrowed so much. IMF has extended a credit facility to Uganda of so much. Beyond that, what are the conditionalities? Where is the money going to be invested? Of course, sometimes when government of Uganda borrows money, we think it's going to be invested everywhere. But sometimes there are conditionalities. Like, for example, enhancing private sector competitiveness, the money that was received from IMF last year. So sometimes all that, if done well, if the media interrogates all that, it helps to bring a number of realities to the debt discourse. Question expenditure. Of course, it doesn't only stop at receiving the money, borrowing, but how is the money spent? Do we invest in sectors where there is a high return on investment? And are we holding government accountable? Of course, after money has been received, after borrowing, it doesn't only stop there. How is it utilized? So that in itself, if the media does it well, we can achieve prudent debt management. In Uganda, the EAC All Africa at large, interrogating the geopolitics around debt, conditionalities, geopolitics, the powers, LDCs, rich countries, multilateral lenders, what are the conditionalities? How does that play out? So that's something that the media could do. Link debt to other development financing mechanisms. Of course, debt is not in isolation. There are other ways of financing development. But is that linked? You know, are all those linked? Of course, when we borrow, the taxpayer feels the pinch. But are we drawing such issues to the attention of the taxpayer? Because when there is a longer repayment period, means we will all feel the pinch. Undertake more research. Of course, this is on our part. We need to undertake more research on debt issues. And of course, table alternatives. Because of course, sometimes the media asks the hard questions. You are saying government should stop their insatiable appetite for borrowing. But what's the alternative? So, even among us, the CSOs, we will continue providing alternatives on what needs to be done, on how maybe we can ensure effective tax administration so that we get more money into our revenue basket to reduce on borrowing, going for loans that don't have really tight conditionalities that enslave us and compromise some of the development aspirations we want to attain. Engage the media in its diversity. Of course, when I was starting my presentation, I emphasized that the media is diverse. So sometimes we might only focus on the print and, of course, broadcast, but the media is diverse. Every now and then, new media comes up. And the need to engage the media in its diversity is critical. Undertake research. This is something that we should keep doing as CSOs because it's part of our core mandate.
I will talk about the journey. And say, as you clearly can see, we are trying to make effort that the media, you the media experts, can join us on this journey. It is not only a journey of civil society organizations, but also the business entities. And there are so many things that can attest to that. I will just give 2 examples if I proceed. There was some work, we worked closely with the New Vision in terms of generating data and the audio. You could kindly get me this other computer here again. I will use that too. The world is also going, at least maybe in the part of the world where we belong, because we don't all belong to the same world and there is no problem. But in the world, for me, which I see that something like, I don't have the clear word, I don't know whether it's the traditional word or upcoming word. Development journalism. Something like development journalism is coming up. That is different from if a frog was seen frog jumping. Of course, it's already a frog, so it is expected to be frog jumping at Africana swimming pool. Oh, this one has touched, this one is here. You remember the 3 a.m. News reporting some time back as an example. That is very good, but some of us were asking, did that contribute to domestic violence or it contributed to solving? I don't know. So the development journalism necessarily has to be building, adding a brick onto the development path. So if you talk about the sustainable development goals and all these, well, you may say that is your side of the literature. For us, what sells is the other one. A policeman was seen at the Electoral Commission gate boxing a fellow guard. That is more news. That is okay, but for me that doesn't add a lot of value. Yet there is a lot of so many other things we could bring out. So I have seen those of you that want jobs at UDN, those of you that will want jobs at the IMF. IMF is International Monetary Fund. those of you that will want jobs at your respective media houses, those of you that want jobs that at the World Bank, those of you that will want jobs at the ministries of government and agencies, as spokespersons, as PR, you have no choice, unfortunately, but to run these things kindly by force, as I had said earlier. In other words, you have, as one pastor says, you have to go there what the Minister of Finance or the Minister of Local Government, Minister of Trade is saying or is about to say. Meaning you must already have understood it, or you have capacity to understand it quickly. When she's opening up a cooperative, that you already have a bit of, what does the cooperative law say? At least you have a bit of understanding, a bit of knowledge around that, because understanding is not compulsory. You have a bit of knowledge around that. I don't want to say understanding. A bit of knowledge around the cooperatives kind of situation in the country. Then you can write a good story from the minister's opening remarks. Big table there and all these excellencies. If you don't, you look at that. Why did they call us for this function? It's so boring. UNDP representative, but now women and equality, what is that? You don't have that background kind of knowledge, and so it necessarily becomes useless. So you stay in where those others stay, you don't become part of the chosen ones, as the song says. But if you want to be part of the chosen, I don't want to say chosen few. The song says we are the chosen few. I dispute that, but I say we are the chosen ones. If you have to belong to that club that can really understand things of the world, and so that we are clear whether this is Seattle in UK or Seattle in Uganda or Seattle elsewhere, you necessarily must read. You must do your own background reading. You don't have the choice. Otherwise, please stay the other side of the swimming pool as we sort out where Seattle is. And I'll give some two examples. This was 2018. And we did some work with the New Vision people, especially providing some facts. And we did an underground kind of investigation of the SAGE. SAGE is the money for the adults, I think. Yes, so if you're an adult, don't be jealous yet, you will get there. Don't worry. SAGE funds, there is a program called SAGE in Uganda for the elderly. And we brought out some facts. We brought out some facts, where the facts, for instance, that 85% of the active older persons in Uganda are engaged in subsistence crop, not just any other farming, with no social security and some of these, and then linked them up to how the program was performing to deal with some of these realities. The short and long story of that is that the report revealed that the percentage of the elderly sleeping into poverty had actually increased. Yet there was an intervention at some point. And part of this was also to do with the fact that that time, that program was only running in a few districts in Uganda, I think about 13 there. And government, out of this partly, because you are not going to say you are the only one who caused this, but rather you made a contribution. Through this contribution, I believe, in the subsequent periods, this SAGE program now covers the entire country. And if one did another round, how is it performing now? Me, that is the kind of journalistic piece I would be waiting for, to read through word by word until that 2 pages or 3 pages are done, rather than running to, I love Manchester United and SC Villa, but before I get there, the other pages is space. That kind of, I've also seen that people who have participated in this kind of report of investigative development journalism aspects have ended up getting promotions. But I am not speaking with anyone. The other one is this. This was December. This was New Vision. We also worked with them. Exactly. We were looking at performance of selected government loans in Uganda that time. We only ran short of money, but it was an exercise. we had wanted to always continue with. In other words, I'm keeping you that there is room there if you chose to go on these videos we've been looking at, to follow one of the grants, one of the roads. Where has it delivered? This was the promise on where it should have been implemented and so much delivered. How has it performed? That report will be one of the few people that will bring that reform in this country, because many are interested in the brokers from Java. So this was Saturday, December 2018, 8th, by one John Masawa, who is known to many of you. This was a government program that we chose to follow, Uganda Support for Municipal Infrastructure Development Program. So when you see Jinja Sebo, this is the money that was funding it, only that you chose to have narrow roads. So somebody it would be interesting. Gulu municipality got the same amount of money. Their roads are bigger. The ones for Jinja are half the size the other side. What happened? Would be very, very interesting. Barara, Lira, Gulu, which you mentioned, Arua, Soroti, I don't remember, but there was Moroto, there was Barara, there was Kabare, and a number of other. And we brought out this, the fact that money for these municipalities, you know better, you are the ones who are trained on how you do investigative journalism. So you can see the municipalities speak out. They also quietly reached out. It was the World Bank funding. Even now it remains the World Bank funding. I hope you can see. But it was ending. Where is that particular title? The municipalities ordered to return the money. The project for implementation period was coming to an end. Guys, we are still stuck with money. Then through these kinds of exposures, the World Bank, I think, was touched, and we know in the hindsight that there was a rolling of some heads at Ministry of Finance and at Ministry of Works. Some of at Ministry of Lands, where this was being hosted. And some people lost their jobs because they were not obstacle. They were becoming a shame to the World Bank and to the government. And then there was a negotiation and an expansion of the number of municipalities to benefit from this. But you can see how that kind of development journalism, in my view, contributed to the new discussions around this particular road. Otherwise, maybe it would have ended quietly. On the World Bank, we delivered what we wanted to do. Government of Uganda said you did it. So quietly we ended the project, but Ugandans will continue paying. Because of that, exposing, I think, power of the media, in my view, there was a contribution to that extent of the negotiations, It's not going to be by choice if you're interested in joining us at the IMF, where you want to go, and at the African Union. I am there is something like this. www. I'm told this is a W, but this one is a W. So I don't know the difference. So W in case it is W. This one I was corrected by my son. No, that it's not a W, it's not a W, it's a W. Then out of shame I went to bed, but in the morning I went for more homework. So there is this website. Is this correct? .go.ug. But don't go away, I'm not telling you. This one. Feel free to put it in your notebook, which you are not going to throw away. Not the one of Africana. Because that one I know you by evening. By tomorrow when we convene, you'll be looking for your homework and it will be part of the language. That website, through many struggles, through many efforts, finally government, as part of the transparency initiatives, government put it up. Anyone with a smartphone here, you all look smart, so you must have smartphones. How can you be smart without a smartphone? Let anybody get there and do you have the internet just for here? No, use your own data. It is for your good. For me, that is the bit I wanted to share with you here. And so when debt is not divorced from debt and development, debt and development, debt and development, what are the questions? In some cases you critique, in other cases you inform. Not so? That's what you say.
My name is Samuel Setumba. Perhaps some of you have met. I see some faces I know, but others maybe not.
Somewhere we have met on TV.
Yes, there's that also, that phenomenon. You meet people and he says, how are you? We could this, they know you, but yeah, there's that also. So it just went back. Anyway, I'm a business editor for MTV and Daily Monitor together. I've been around doing business journalism for 22 years. I don't know where some of you were when I started. Before me, or after I started, I don't know, but I remember the very early days of Uganda Network.
Before you, yes, before you.
Okay.
But after you were born.
Yes. We can say me and Uganda Network are contemporaries in terms of business journalism. So we can move to the next slide, 7. I call it the debt ecosystem, and I began with terms and Julius, sovereign debt. Yeah. Who can guess what sovereign debt is? It has a tendency to have wings in one of the things you has explained, but who knows what, give him a mic, he knows what sovereign debt is. I know he's shy.
Let's say it really, but let me just say something more about it. You know, there are so many things that's put up there. So the sovereign debt really, what is the sovereign debt really? That is the debt that the level or the debt which a country, you as Uganda, it is a national debt now, the national debt of the country.
You are owned. You are owned.
The word sovereignty as a national debt.
Okay. Absolutely. And there you find things like sovereign loans. Sovereign loans may not be multilateral. It's a strange thing I found in government. The sovereign loan may not be a multilateral loan or bilateral loan, as been said. The sovereign loan, you go to the international debt market, which is not a country or a bank, but it's an international place, a market where people go, and several people can give you the money. And normally that money is more expensive. In short term, it comes quickly, not so many strings, but it is expensive, it's more expensive. You don't have a lot of room for negotiation like Kenya. Kenya likes using sovereign loans. They give it to you and it's about 3-4 years. And Kenya will borrow to build a road quickly and start paying back, but it has some disadvantages. I think Julius, in the presentations coming, maybe tomorrow will explain that. Why does Uganda opt to do multilateral and not sovereign loans? Okay. Terminology will continue. Debt sustainability, I don't know whether you've come across it yesterday or maybe tomorrow. What is that animal? Debt to GDP ratio, these are things that you're going to encounter as a journalist. Some things they will throw at you. And normally they can come from, let me say, critics, like from civil society. These they will use to argue that, see, we are over borrowing, we are not making enough revenue. So this sustainability, can we pay back? Debt to GDP ratio, we are supposed to be at 50. I think we are slightly over. They said 49. My suspicion is we are over 50.
We are about 60.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what should
going by this.
Yes. UDN should have a better number because they sleep, breathe, do this thing every time. So they will know. So yeah, what does that mean? We shall let us see. So what? Debt to GDP ratio, you see it there, what's the big deal? Concessional debt, yeah, I just want to tell you to explain that. It's there in the book. Concessional debt. Pass and non-concessional. Concessional, normally the terms are good. We can pay back over a long time and the interest rate could be like as low as 2%. And they give us maybe 5 years before we pay back, for example. Which is different from other debts. Other debts you start paying immediately. But concessional, the terms are normally flexible. Non-concessional is the opposite. It's a little bit tight and hard to country. So Uganda has a tendency to go for concessional debt. And in that behavior, that's where sometimes our problem lies. Going to debt which is a bit flexible. That means we can borrow money and keep it there and disburse. Oh, now we understand. You can borrow money, keep it there, and nothing happens because the terms are we're paying 100%. Yet, if you borrow concessional debt, then we'll be under pressure. So Uganda tends to go for that long-term debt with the more flexible terms, but they sleep on the job. And therefore, our debt swells, and yet our revolving is not matching the debt. That's one of the issues we'll see later. Why countries borrow? We have discussed, and we have discussed maybe yesterday and maybe tomorrow, the problem of debt. I don't know whether you will discuss why there's need for countries to borrow. And why does the journalist need to know this? Because it tempers your positions, so you don't get skewed to one side. It gives you objectivity if you understand why we borrow. For example, point number 3, emergency. There was COVID. Everybody saw it. If we did not borrow, if Uganda did not borrow, maybe we would have had an issue. It's a big, big issue. However, the question can come, how was some of the money used? Okay, that's an issue. But we needed to borrow because there was an emergency which we could not contend with. Our internal resources, the economy closed. Where are we going to get the $1 million for drugs and so on? And to keep paying civil servants and all that. There was an emergency. And so if you don't necessarily understand the emergency, it can temper the way you report. If you have the facts that there was an emergency. There's something they call, sometimes we borrow because of fiscal indiscipline. Fiscal indiscipline means, fiscal means, let me just describe it. Fiscal, government expenditure. Sometimes we borrow because we are not using the money we have borrowed before well enough.
My job is to make college easy.
The tax revenues we collect, we are not using them very well. So fiscal indiscipline can be cause for borrowing, like in Uganda's case. Taxes are borrowed, but they are not used effectively. And that's what I think I had the Ramadan Kori said the other day. We are not going to continue just expansionary budget, meaning we need something, we just step, we borrow. Let's go back to the little money we have and see, are we using it very well? We gave you money, you didn't use it, we get it from you, we give you somebody who's going to use it. That is now fiscal discipline. Yeah? So why countries borrow? And I got that because of Uganda. I think the time I've covered finance, financial aid. We have a lot of fiscal discipline. Let me tell you, when it came to central bank, we complained about that issue. We borrow money, we don't use it very well. Or we borrow it, and it's supposed to do a road, it goes and does things which don't add value in the long term to the country. So, fiscal discipline for us sometimes is a reason for borrowing. So when you're reporting about it, bear in mind, you can ask yourself those questions. And UDN, it's a good thing it exists. Because if they do this a lot, then they have information. Sometimes they can give you their own analysis, but you can get your own analysis from their numbers. If your mind is placed right. Then there is this geopolitics. Sometimes debt is acquired by sheer geopolitics. What do I mean to you? Geopolitics. How do you understand this? Let's start conversation. Is that a hand?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Is there a mic?
No, do I do?
Okay. We can be that localized. But if you are borrowing from outside, how does geopolitics apply? Anyone know? Give it a shot. No, absolutely correct.
Penetrate Africa. You see China, it has an interest in Africa. You see Russia. So they try to pump money here, even when you don't need it, because they are having their own interest. So each of these countries try to have their interest, but at the same, in so doing, we accumulate the debt because we are getting money we don't even need.
Absolutely. And you are saying, borrow the money you need, not because it is available. So you might find that the Chinese, we have the most expensive road. Central Express Highway. In the world, yes. But, yeah. So, why was it built like that? Is because the money was available first. So there was no room for giving, asking so many questions. And so the money was given and we are going to pay back over a long time. And that is, the Chinese are interested in giving us the money because then they leverage, they have an advantage over us. Once we have borrowed so much money from them, there's anything we can't do. When it comes to oil, they will say, please don't forget us. And then we say, yeah, because we are deliberate, we have a disadvantage of it. If you remember the oil allocation, I think the refinery. What I heard is that the president was forced in quotes, to include a certain group which was coming from Italy. But the roots were actually American. Why? Because it was viewed that the Chinese were dominating to give a bit American so that geopolitically you don't look like you are alienating these guys because they won't need them to. Third countries meaning us, Uganda's context. There could be many others, but these are the ones that are top of mind in experience. Why we borrow? Number one, need beyond our funding capacity. That's legitimate. That's legitimate. We borrow some money, we build roads. There's one road I remember, Nyendo, Bukakata. It's about 20 kilometers. When I was coming to Kalanga, I was going through Masaka, and it was a very bad road. And it took, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. Now, those kilometers will take you, at 60 kilometers, you are going to arrive in about 30 minutes. And if you're going to have a holiday in Kalanga, you start to appreciate if you have seen the bad road and this road. And that road was funded by the Arab Development Bank, yeah, money from the Arab Bank. And so I understand that, okay, money was borrowed, the road was built, I can see. And I asked the islanders, just casually, how is it with the road? They said, man, you have no idea. Now we can do ABCD because of that road. Now we want the island road to be made. So you see, that is road translated to development. That is needs beyond our funding capacity. That's justified. And journalists, if you analyze and there is something justified, let it be. If a borrowing is good and it has the deeper effects, so be it. Let's write about it. But if there are other issues, let's also write about it. One time my editor is now on the board of Nation Media. He came to Kampala and was complaining about us those days, Monitor. Why are you being crusaders? Crusaders means if a road is being commissioned, it's a good road, we will put a spin on it to make it a bit negative. He said, stop it. If it is good, good. If it is bad, bad. Yeah. Be balanced, and we shall see about that point later. Let's move. The context of covering date, I brought this for the sake of all of us, and I think, let me just ask, how many of you feel you are business and financial journalists? Like, that's how you feel. Just raise your hand. How many of you feel I am a business and financial journalist? That's what I awake and sleep that.
Just feeling, I feel it.
And the real one, not Kwara.
Okay. Okay. Very good. The rest of us are what?
Are they the Kwara you talked about?
All right. I don't know that it has a good result that you want. Okay.
You did Twitter.
My hand is up. All right. So the context, I brought this to help us understand that if you grab this book that UDN has published, it's a very good book actually. When I grabbed it, I wanted to read every page because I have context.
You have no choice.
Yeah, I have context. So context helps. So, debt is not an island. you have sat here, you're reporting about debt, but it's not an island. You see, Julius was referring to the Public Finance Management Act. That touches many things, but touches debt also. Yeah? Bonds and bills, especially bills and bonds, they can have other dimensions. For instance, if foreign investors who buy those bonds leave the country, the shilling is going to weaken. There's that dimension, but somehow bonds and bills touch debt. So, debt is not an island, it's a contextual subject. That means you need to know a few more things to appreciate debt very well. The things we have learned in this workshop are going to become useful if you have a context. They will have meaning. So if you feel like you're a business and financial journalist, try to understand the context of debt. That's why I posed the question, are you interested in being a business and financial reporter? If you are, you cannot escape dealing with debt. And continue. If you're still wondering, I want to persuade you to do that, because there are not many of us.
Yeah.
We shall always be needed and clamored for by the industry. If you become good, they will look for you. You ask, why have I stayed in social media for 22 years? You think I've not tried to leave? I've tried. But they have kept me. Because you have something they need. Of course, couples, you have it, they want you. So, if you want to be, because let me tell you, the speaker has died, right? They are going to bury. Everybody can report that, don't you? Yeah. You can stand with the mic and describe. I can see they're crying. I can see the guy. But if it comes to, say, reading off the budget and analyzing, then you think everybody can do it? No. So you get yourself premium if you understand these things like that. So, if you want to be a business and financial reporter, be at it. It will pay dividends eventually. Even if you don't stay in the media, you will end up with UDN as an analyst. And I'm just saying, Julius.
It is true.
Okay.
Are you sure, Julius? Yes, I am. Perfectly sure.
And the context again is you have an advantage of knowing what many people find boring. You look at those numbers in that book. If you understand these things, you open, you feel, hey, wow. Somebody else just sits tables, they say, you don't cheat. You always have an age. How can we do it? What can we do with numbers? They are there in our lives. There, it is there. It's a variable that can't go away. So, having knowing what people find boring always gives you an edge, your premium, as I said earlier. It can afford you advantages to travel and find exposure. If you understand data very well and other factors, I'll give you an example what happened to us, to me, and Lula there. How many of you have been to the US? As a journalist. And I'm not prepared here, don't say everyone here. How many of you have been there? Okay, you can say, what's the big deal?
We have been here before.
It doesn't I and Lula go to USA, IMF, and meet with the bank governors of the world and the finance ministers. It is because the guys were looking around, who understands these issues, These guys have been reporting about it for a while. When we have a conversation with them, they think, okay, yeah, good. We did not lobby. They just said, do you want to go to the US? We said, yeah. And we understood why. But it was, when you go there, I had an interview with the deputy president of IMF then. And they asked me, because I'm in Uganda, it's a small country. So they were asking, which interview do you want to have? I said, I want Lagarde, the boss.
Yeah.
They said, I said, I want Lagarde. I don't want anything else. I'm not seeing them, but I want Lagarde. Yes. They were like taken aback. Yeah, that's what they were saying. But I had questions to her. I interviewed the deputy, Lagarde's deputy anyway at the beginning. And the man said, after the interview, like you could see his expression, he said, I have never been asked questions like this. He was a Japanese. I believed him because he was a Japanese. It does not leave you the same. After that, I was not left the same. I went back 3 months later. You do 2 rounds. It doesn't leave you the same when you come back. The IMF took us through a session where it is no buzz held. Means ask any question. There are no cameras. Just ask. Anything. If you feel bad about IMF, ask. We ask questions. It helps you in your professional development. So that's just one example, guys. The trouble is there. So that's one personal advantage if you understand these things. It's not just numbers and sitting here in a workshop with Julius and no. It has personal advantages.
Even traveling with Africans. Traveling with Africans. And many other Ugandans. How many Ugandans and eating this morning.
I threw in this slide for the sake of us because debt is abstract. Can be abstract. Can be a concept. Yeah? That's why I said there. Be prepared to do something with the knowledge and exposure, or else, with time, it can feel purposeless. If you know about debt, always try to answer the question, so what, so what, so what. If you don't answer that question, eventually you get bored, even if you are good. So let the knowledge you gain, all this exposure, with what you're training us here, do something with it. That way, you feel like you're progressing. Eh? It's not just knowing. So what if you know? Or if you're a journalist, you become a senior journalist, you become an editor. I don't know. Progress. From knowledge. Don't stagnate. This is what all these things we're learning help us to do. I dropped this slide in for career issues. To motivate you, don't say, now those dead things, but no. If you get good, cover debt. A fair degree of comfort with numbers. Look at that book they gave you. When you look at it, are you getting switched off, or you are thinking, what do you think means when, and I keep the book somewhere. I want to take that book and look at it again, because I see some good analysis there. For instance, we shall talk about this later. And this past debt, I like that subject. From just that, I can ask questions and do stories from that. And this past debt, why? Which debt? What happened? And so on and so on. I saw Works and Transport accounting for the biggest debt by percentage. There is so much underlying that. But in order for you to see that, Julius has been struggling to bring it down. There's an extent to which you can go. But if you're dealing with debt, for example, it's not about you and your byline per se. It's about you a bit, but it's not about you entirely. It's about the people. Ask yourself, when I do a story, will people say, if it's TV, will they say, hey, okay, oh, and you Deburunji, as he has explained, will people say that? So be anchored on purpose for the audience. I know there are some people on TV who people say they are talking to themselves, and they get out of backlash with the accent. Don't be like that. Don't be like that. Let it be about the viewers, the listeners. Find a way to bring it down to them. All that will bring you back dividends over the years. I promise you it will. You will find somebody who said, I like your pieces. You say, why, sir? You really try to help me understand these things. And you don't know that person who's saying that to you and where they can take you. They may not take you somewhere, but in the multitude, something will give. So, please, let it be about people. Even if you are looking for dead stories, don't look for just controversy. Let it be about people. Remember, it's about them, not you. Same point. Okay, let's move on. A desire to keep yourself informed. I have not made so many analyses like this book actually. This book that you shared, I like the book. I've been around these numbers for a while, but this is a very good analysis. That's because that's what they do every day. And therefore, they will be a very good source to the end. Not for only their press conferences when they talk about something small. Budget. From this book, you can come back to them and say, and then you can go to other sources and develop stories. So, keep yourself informed. Ask those who know to teach you, like these guys. They know. To some extent. Ask them. 6 short courses on financial reporting. COVID has disrupted things, but in Uganda we used to have a lot of training, like Reuters. I think Reuters came one time and gave us a 2 weeks training. 6 those courses. They are the ones which are going to help you to become proficient. Don't be a cynic. Don't be a cynic. Be balanced. Do you know what I mean by a cynic? Don't be cynical. Cynical means you only see negative. You can be in that frame. I was dealing with a journalist who was reporting about oil, and I told him I need some positive stories of oil. He says, which ones are those? I say, for instance, on the oil pipeline, there have been people who have been hotels which have been rented. One has talked to those guys how they have benefited from the fact that staff from doing the pipeline has come to their hotels. Said, hey, only positive stories. Clearly his mind was packed in negative. So don't be a cynic. Cynical people see negative. See some positives. Yes, they are. Even if it's a negative, don't see it cynically. Okay, just ask why and explain. Analytical skills, connecting dots. Again, I go back to this book. There's a lot of things here. They have tried to connect the dots for us. But if you are not careful, you may miss the dots. The dots are in here. Hope I can find an example quickly. China being the biggest bilateral lender to Uganda. On the surface, well, what's the big deal with that? Guys, it can be a non-big deal issue. But let's discuss for a moment the scenario. China being the biggest country, single country that lends to Uganda. How can we make it a big deal, guys? Think with me, and maybe it may be part of your project tomorrow. How can we make China as being the biggest bilateral lender to us become a big deal? We're trying to do some dot connection. What do you think? It's open, don't worry. Just tell us what you think. What do you think as a journalist? China, biggest bilateral lender? So what? Sure, and I come to you. Yes, speak up. There's no money.
Let me simplify it.
Yeah.
If you went to a bank and took money and you mortgage the full property, when you default on that loan, what does the bank do? Very simple. You'll come take this house and you'll have nothing to sell. So that's what China can do.
Absolutely. The things that lie in those agreements that are being, hindsight. As I say, they have a tendency of attaching value to your properties, real assets. They're not like the other guys. These ones come and say, you want the money, we'll give it to you. But decide that if ABC, then we take this. I think Kenya was in that situation, and Zambia. So that becomes a so what. Also, it might be that, okay, maybe let's put our area, that's business journalists. The political guys may look at it and say, what is the geopolitical question when China is giving us a lot of money? What's the geopolitical question? That can be something to analyze. And so you can ask yourself, why not China? I mean, why not another country? Why China? I see there is UK there, and I think there are some other European countries. Why is it that they don't give us much? What is the story in there? You can have a very good conversation with experts to tell us why. And what's the danger of continuing to acquire this bilateral debt from this single borrower on those kinds of conditions, you start to, your story becomes a warning. You're not quoting Kasaija or anyone, no. You have generated this yourself, and you go and ask people, experts, and you form a warning story. It's not, that story is for a good read. It makes people say, hey, but no. But that's something you have generated from a simple fact. That is just connecting the dots. So let's develop the art of connecting the dots from the things we encounter, the numbers, because there's a lot of stories underneath there. And to achieve that is not, this workshop cannot give you that all. It's something you keep on doing, 2, 3, 4 years you become proficient. Civil society, UDN, and others, Parliament of Uganda. These political reporters who are in Parliament, always they are now very busy with the elections of the. You can't blame them. That's what makes their blood boil. But when you go to Parliament, where are you going to find the numbers pertaining to the economy and debt? I remember in 2005, or 2002, I was forced by the editor. I was in the radio now. It's now KFM, just like FM. I told the editor I want to report about business and finance. He said, don't tell me those stories. I was heading to Parliament. When I stepped into Parliament, you know where I went? I went to the Committee on Finance, Committee on the Economy, Committee on the Budget. Because I understood what I wanted. And in there, the journalists would skim on the surface for any political comments. I would ask for reports and try to look in there and ask, what does this mean, and so on. Of course, my stories always run somewhere below. Because they were not caught in terms of comment. But eventually, I premiumed myself. Because people started noticing that, hey, we are dealing with this issue, that's the guy. So, armed with sources. Attorney General's not Attorney General's office, the reports. They have a lot of these things on debt. Auditor General's report has a lot of these issues on debt. Let's move on. Okay, now we are back to the issues. By no means this is exhaustive, but if you're dealing with debt, what are the issues to cover? Debt sustainability, of course. Can Uganda pay? If it can't pay, what are the consequences? Of course, that's the top story. Debt management. I saw in this book, it points out, which is also conventional finance. About 20% of our budget is going back to paying debt. Now the question is, so what? That's where you come in, so what? That means that for the sectors which budgets are going to be cut, it might be because we are doing debt repayment. And which debts are those ones which are not being disbursed, but we are paying interest on them? That's a very good answer. And these guys give it in the book. In the end, they give it. How you can ask them and other people. Which are those undisbursed loans that are being paid interest on? And you can zero in on a particular project. If it's a road, you say this has not been built because the loan is just sitting there. Because of some people refusing to allow a tree to be cut. For example, what's the effect of that, of storing that project? Now we are speaking about debt management, vis-a-vis undisbursed loans and the impact on the communities who are supposed to benefit from those roads. The Beauty Express Highway was stolen a year partly, apart from COVID, because of that. Now it has been resolved, but it has been reported sensationally. You know, the speed hits, what, that is nice to be. For us, what's our road? We can say, okay, the time they have delayed to build that road in that section, it has delayed the project by this amount and it's going to increase the cost by this amount. and so on. So we are making sense. Debt management. There's something they call fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility is how people spend money and account for it. And that's where issues of corruption come in and so on. Those are the issues to cover for us. Then there is value for money. Is borrowed money causing real growth? And this one we can go by project. You ask, and these documents are there, and they're not hidden. For instance, what money is borrowed is going to which project? There's an example they gave in Bali. I think it was borrowed money to build a water system for people to do that or whatever. That was a big deal. And 4-5 years later, there was really nothing. There was no water flowing. It was supposed to help those people in that without irrigation. Do we say we got value for money there? That's an issue. And this can be project by project. I remember civil society when my partner in Ministry Finance, they said we need the media to come and help us go down and examine money this past whether it has been built, the roads, the bridges and everything else. But I don't know whether we have the time. But you can take it upon yourself, you can have it up. I don't think the editors are going to hand it over to you, but if you start it on your own, before you know it, you're going to premium yourself. The other issue is debt and credit rating. Does anyone understand this? And somebody help me explain it in simpler words. Debt and credit rating for the country. Anyone? Give it a shot, no problem. Don't worry. Well, how do you understand that?
Debt and credit rating.
Yeah, of the country.
Because now these are keywords I'm looking at. Credit, debt, and credit.
Rating.
And then maybe rating. Debt and credit rating of a country, in my thinking, it refers to...
There's a mic there behind you.
In my thinking, of course I stand to be corrected eventually.
No problem, go ahead.
I think it's about rating, as a country, rating ourselves to another country in terms of credit. That is what I pick from it.
Yeah, thank you very much. So what is
it? Comparing ourselves as Uganda with other countries as far as debt is concerned.
Is the keyword you used there, there is a comparison?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Anyone has something to add on that?
I think it's a process upon which a given country is paying back, trying to cover back the debt that has been given.
All right. Little bit of central, don't you?
Like likelihood of a country to borrow and how it can pay back in a different period of time.
Yeah, those aspects you are saying are moving parts within the frame. Wow, give us the show.
Debt and credit rating, we look at, you mentioned the keyword comparison, and we have agencies that take the hard work to analyze every country, and lenders tend to look at the figures. They will rate Uganda maybe A+, and maybe Kenya, they say Kenya is a B-. So if you're going to lend money to Uganda, you have an idea that maybe this one is a better devil. Borrow. Yeah, it's a better borrower than Uganda. So that's where I think the whole idea is.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you guys were near the point. You just drove it home. There is an agency, there are agencies. The only one, there are others. It rates countries and says that one is risky, the OBC. And that depends on how the country pays back debt.